Hey there, welcome to this new tutorial. My name is Philip, and today we're going to be looking at one of the basic concepts in topology, really, and that is outlining important topological or topological features of a model, and then figuring out how to make that work with the rest of the model. So I've got 3 examples in this file, and I'm going to be recreating them from scratch. These are the final versions that I worked on a bit earlier today. It's this morning, actually. I finished these up this morning to kind of like a proof of concept. And keep in mind that this is not necessarily the ultimate solution. It's a way of doing it, and there's probably quite a few others. But the concept behind outlining important topology is still essential, no matter what the method you use is, unless, of course, maybe you're modeling low poly, which is a whole different ballgame, really. But yeah, we're going to be going over 3 models. I have a cube here with a nice curved corner, or basically it's a beveled corner, I think, or not a beveled, let's just say a cutout, because I was thinking of routers used for making moldings and things, so power tools. And this is on layer 6. Layer 7, we've got a cylinder with the same sort of spherical cutout, and we're going to be looking at recreating that. And the third one, we're not going to be recreating this one specifically, but it's just another example of a shape, and these are all quads, so there are no triangles, which is kind of ironic considering this is a pyramid. But there are no triangular faces in this model. So yeah, we're going to start with the cube. So what I did with the cube, I still have part of what I used to generate this. The first thing I'm going to do is switch to layer 1. I seem to have lost my screencast keys. Are these all set up? Let me just test this here. Yep, okay. So I still have part of what I used to create these shapes, and that is a polysphere. Now a polysphere is a sphere that is all quads. So if you look at this here, we can see that it's basically, well, it's actually a cube. Let me just show that real quick. I'll hide that. Add a cube, and we'll add a control 2 to add a subsurface modifier. And I actually turned it up to 3, I think, for the other sphere. Yeah, it's roughly 3. Let me just undo that. So yeah, that's the polysphere right there, and then we apply the modifier and we get this nice all-quad ball. And that's quite useful for what I was going to do there, because we don't have to deal with any of the nasty triangles around the poles. Now the only thing is that it's not quite the right size, so I'm going to scale it up to match roughly 2. There we go. And so that's our polysphere. That's how I generated that. That's all. I don't need that anymore, actually. I still have one here. Oops. Yeah, I'm using my Wacom, so sometimes the things move around on their own. Or sort of on their own. But yeah, so what I'm going to use to create that cube that's on layer 6 is I'm going to use the Boolean modifier. Now the Boolean modifier is a bit picky sometimes. It's, whoops, wrong object. In my experience, it doesn't always work the same way twice, but in this case it seems to work really well. So what I'm going to do is move this over, oops, I've still got it set to vertex snapping. Move this over move it to the corner basically, just to give us something to work with, without messing up the rest of the shape. And that's basically how we want it, and then we're going to I'm going to select this cube, and I'm using a couple of add-ons here. I forgot to mention this. I'm using the F2 add-on. I'll just bring these up real quick. F2, which is in Mesh. Using this add-on here, I'm in 2.67a. So I've got this add-on enabled, and Jonathan Williamson's Quick Tools. I've got version 0.7. I'll check the links in the link in the description below. You should find the link for that add-on. This one here. And what this does, it adds a couple of quick object tools or quick mesh tools, including add modifier. So I'm just going to add a Boolean modifier real quick. Select our polysphere, and off the bat it kind of messes things up, and because it's set to intersect, you're basically left with only that part there, which is inside the polysphere. And that's not what we want. So we want difference. So what that does is it basically cuts out this shape into the cube. So we can, we can now hide this and apply our Boolean modifier. And as we can see, we get this nice all-quad shape. However, we get these nasty triangles here. So that's part of what we're going to be doing. We're also going to be trying to effectively model or retopologize this entire area without creating too many edge loops, and to keep our vertex limit fairly low, or not vertex limit, but vertex count fairly low, but still being easy to modify. So the first thing I want to do with this is I actually want to bring back that polysphere, and I want to set my cursor to the center of the polysphere. So I just press Shift S and 3 because it's the third entry in the list, cursor to selected, and go back into our cube. And the first thing I want to do is select these edge loops here. I'm using left click select, by the way, because of the Wacom pen. So I select these 3 edge loops, set my pivot point to 3D cursor, which it already was for some reason, probably a leftover from my tests. And then I want to extrude just these 3 edges, or that edge loop, and scale them up. So what that gives us is a nice border face loop around this entire thing, which we can then work off of to create the rest of these, the rest of these faces here. So the first thing I want to do now is I want to switch to edge mode, select these edges here, cancel out of select mode, and delete the edges. So what that leaves us with is a nice cage, and there's a few extra edges here that we just have to get rid of. The edges, and then just relink those. There we go. So that will be the base for our model. And this is basically the most important part of this model. And to be honest, these are very simple examples, but the concept still applies to pretty much anything. Outlining the important features and then fitting the rest around it, and figuring out how to make this as efficient and effective as possible. And that's really the most important thing when you're doing this kind of thing, this kind of modeling. So we've got our base, all our base, and the first thing I want to do is make more edge loops around here just to match up this nice face loop here, because what I want is for this to continue all the way around so I can sharpen the entire edge all in one go with an edge loop a bit later down the line. So what I want to do to do that is I'm going to add a edge loop and switch over to vertex snapping, shift it over to line up with that vertex there, and it should line up with that one as well. And do the same over here. Whoops. And do the same, I think I'm missing one. Yeah, over here. There we go. So that would be our base. And yeah, that's pretty much it. So just to make sure that our edges here line up properly, as you can see, I'm filling in faces just by selecting one edge. That's the F2 add-on in action. And I could have just selected. Actually, let me just show this properly. I'll delete this edge just to show it off properly. Select these 2 vertices, fill them in to create an edge, and then click, click. Fill that in nice and quick. So I'll just fill these in. So that would be the basics of what we're going for. So there's a few other things I want to make sure I get in here before I start filling this in. So I'll just take these vertices, duplicate them. Whoops, I'm still set to 3D cursor. So yeah, I just want to rotate these around, or around the Z actually, and just snap them to there we go. Snap them to there, then add my edge loop, scale it in along the X just to make sure it's nice and flat, and that would be where's that other vertex? Oh, it's gone. Okay, that's interesting. Must have auto-merged. But yeah, that's what we want to do in this area, so I want to do the same thing over here. Should be easier since I already have a few of these set up. And I want to do the same over here. Got this thing turned on for some reason. Oh, there it is, that's why. That thing is always turned on by default, and I always forget to turn it off. The occlude background geometry button. It's always on when I start Blender. So I'll just duplicate this process over here and snap those there. Oops. Accidentally hit the Z. And delete that little edge loop there. Add that in. And I need a second one over here. It should be the last one. It's a bit of a crappy workflow, but there's probably a better way to do it. I just can't think of it at the moment. So I'm just going really basic here. There we go. That's yeah, it's kind of slow. But one of the nice things about the F2 add-on now is that we don't need to actually extrude these. We can just select this vertex here, hover our mouse in the general direction we want to fill the face, and boom, it fills it in automatically. That's a nice little addition. Just fill these in. Oops. A bit slower than usual today. Probably because I'm recording. But anyway, there we go. So that's our base shape. And one of the goals here is to not affect these faces at all, to keep them as they are. So we have to figure out how to reroute some of this topology and to simplify it further down the line so it basically becomes 2 vertices instead of 4. So I'm going to use a bit of a trick to do that. So the first thing I want to do is fill that, oops, wrong button, fill in that face. And then I just want to fill these in with some n-gons. And I usually don't use n-gons, to be perfectly honest. But they come in handy when you're trying to do something like this to figure out how you're going to shape topology, especially with flat surfaces. It's just really useful, and it avoids having all these triangles and messy faces in the way. So I just want to add in another edge loop over here and over here. I can remember how I set it up the last time, so instead of adding these in later, I'll just add them in now. There we go. So that would be our edge loops. And I just want to subdivide this. I'm kind of going backwards. And join these so it splits up the face. And that's basically it. So how do we turn these vertices into, or this basically group of edge loops or face loops into one big continuous one? So that's one of my favorite things, to be honest. So I want to grab the knife tool, which is K, and click here. I want to add a quad right there, confirm it, and then join these, and then join these, and then just to be lazy, delete this face, rotate this around. I'm probably doing this wrong. No, okay, there we go. And there we go. And that's our faces done. It's really that simple. And the nice thing about this is I can just select these faces again. I probably should use face select. And then just rotate them around. Set that to 3D cursor again. And rotate it 90 degrees. Rotate it 90 degrees again. Remove doubles with Control-Shift-D. That's a custom shortcut I set. Very useful. And just to make sure, recalculate our normals. So that's our cube right there. Give me a second. I'll be right back. So yeah, as I was saying, this is basically our finished shape, and we've managed to keep all these faces nice and simple. And the great thing about this is if we now add a subsurf modifier with Jonathan Williamson's awesome add-on, we can now go in and add our sharpening edge loops. So let's say I put one in there, put it say 0.7, just to make sure these are all equal. I got another one where? That one. Oh, this one. But, whoops, 0.8. And yeah, basically I'll just do these real quick and sloppy. I put that one in already. Oh, that one. That's the one I was missing. There we go. And that's our shape right there. So I'll just shade this as smooth. And there we go. It's really simple, nice and clean, easy to modify, and we've simplified our topology nicely. These are all quads, so it's really just it's full of win. And that's basically the concept behind managing topology, is outlining what is important in the model and then sort of making the rest of it fit around it, because especially with flat surfaces, like in this case, this little trick here of rerouting around to simplify topology going down, this really only works with flat surfaces. So for instance, on a car, you could basically use this on maybe a car's door or on the boot lid, but not on the wheel arch or anything that's curved, because it will show up. So there are a few tricks like that that you have to kind of take into consideration when you're managing topology, that sometimes certain tricks and tips and workflows don't work well with certain surfaces, but in this case this works great. So it's a win-win, if that actually applies. I don't know, that's what came to mind. So anyway, let's go and use our polysphere again, and I've hidden it for some reason, and I'll clear its location. So the second one, like I showed earlier, it's on layer 7, is the cylinder. Now this one is a bit more complicated because we have to maintain a circular shape. Like I was saying a minute ago, the certain topology tricks don't work well with curved surfaces. And curved surfaces, especially circular ones, you have to maintain a circular shape pretty much at all times. So it does add a bit of complexity to what we're doing. So one of the tricks I've found, and we're going to again use the Boolean modifier. So I'm going to go into my second layer here, add another sphere, center my 3D cursor, add a cylinder, scale it up, whoops, bring this down to 16 first. I always work with a 16 polysphere cylinder to start with. Scale that up to 2 along the Z, or actually I should probably do that in edit mode. There we go. Bring that up to be level with floor, like our cube, which I forgot to do. There we go. And bring up our polysphere, which is on Alt 1. Bring that up about 2 again, and bring it out halfway, other way. There we go. So that right there would be the setup for our cylinder. So what I'm going to do is now add the Boolean modifier. And again, you don't necessarily have to use the Boolean modifier. I just use it for this example because it's nice and quick. And there we go. That's our nice shape cut out. And just apply this modifier. Where is it? Apply all modifiers. And there we go. So I'll just move that back to, what did I do there? Whoops. Point, I want to, oh, that's confusing shortcuts here. There we go. So now if we look at the cylinder, we can see that there are a lot of triangles. And to be honest, we don't really need to work with the whole thing. So let me just go into side view here, or control side view, and let's add a edge loop right there. We'll join these vertices here. Delete the bottom half and the top half, or the left hand half, right hand. Wow. There we go. So that should be nice and easy to work with. I'll add a mirror modifier just so we can see what we're doing. So we're still only working on a quarter of the surface, but we get the whole result anyway. Excuse me, just grab a drink of juice. There we go. So the problem here is that we get a lot of messy topology because of the booleans. So one of our objectives in this model specifically is to simplify this and maintain the overall shape and the accuracy of the shape, but while making this nice and clean and efficient. So I could just go into the other layer and just show you how I built this one, but that would be cheating. Or not cheating, but it would be kind of defeat the purpose. So the first thing I want to do is actually replace a lot of these with n-gons. So just select these edges, and I have to be in edge select mode first. So select these edges here, that one down there too, and these three, and I'm going to dissolve them, or limited dissolve. So it keeps the shape, but deletes the extraneous edges. So switch back to vertex mode. So we can see that I get lots of n-gons here, and the inside is still quite messy. So what I'm going to do in this case is I'm going to take a few of these vertices and just merge them to other ones, like these ones we don't really need. There seems to be some edge problems around here that I'll fix in a second. Yeah, I can't seem to find that. So I'm going to dissolve this vertex. Whoops. I have to use limited dissolve, seems. Or not. What is it doing? Sorry, there's something going on with... Why is it linked to that? It didn't do this last time, so it's probably just some sort of artifact. So I'll rejoin these. Or not. Yeah, I'm not sure what's going on here. I'll just undo that. There we go. So I'll just snap these in place instead. And just to, in general, simplify what we're dealing with here, just so we can keep our workspace nice and clean. So this one we don't need. And it's really not working quite well. I don't know what it's doing, but it was not doing this earlier. There we go. So I'll just remove doubles and convert these to quads. And that one we don't need. Wow, it really doesn't want to work. It worked earlier. Yeah, okay, forget it. I'll just fill that in with a n-gon. And this, another n-gon. As I was saying earlier, the n-gons, in my opinion, are really useful just for simplifying what you're working with, because you still have all these vertices that you don't need, but you don't get all the messy edges that kind of clog up the view. So the trick with this one is to figure out how to manage more vertices but keep it still cylindrical while still keeping it efficient. You still haven't recorded tutorials in a while. But yeah, the trick is to figure out how to reroute topology around these edges while keeping the cylindrical shape. So I'm again going to be using the knife tool. So I'll switch to front view, call up knife, and actually before I do that, before I forget, I want to do something real quick, and that is I'm going to add, or take out these vertices, add a new circle, move it up over here, and this is the default 32, so it's twice as many vertices, and I want to keep those vertices there, delete the rest, remove doubles there, excuse me, and then just fill this in. Whoops, wrong direction. Wrong direction. There we go. So obviously that causes some problems down there. But yeah, that should be relatively easy to fix. Let me just do this real quick. That's where it goes. I'll just snap that there, and doubles again, and just fill that in with an n-gon, just so we can keep working. And wow, it really doesn't want to work like it does usually. There we go. So that keeps our nice shape that we can work with. So back to our knife tool. So I'll just enable the background geometry thing so we don't cut the edges behind it. Excuse me. So I'm going to call up the knife, add in my vertex points here, and we're going to encounter a couple of things while doing this, like a few problematic areas and so on. But we'll work on those when we get to them. So I'm going to add one right down the center here, and then confirm it. So obviously there's a problem down here where this needs to be connected, and probably one down here, so I'll just add in a nice edge loop. And if you're wondering, my continuous grab doesn't want to work for some reason, not when I'm using the Wacom. There we go, and just snap that there, join that there. There we go. So now we should be able to work with this a bit more easily. So that should theoretically be enough vertices to create this shape. So of course we have to simplify what's in here, and to do that, what I want to do is select the vertices I want to keep. Since the shape is the right one but the topology isn't, I want to keep the vertices that I need. So for instance, this one, this one, this one, maybe that one, and these, and what's up there, and that one, and duplicate it and split it off to its own object, which we can now work on without having the rest of it in the way. So this over here we can join, or actually create a face with it, fill in this face. This one we should need another, oops, seems that, whoops, Quake. So just fill this in, grab the knife again, add another cut, and convert this to a quad. And that one seems to be a bit out of place, I'll shift it along. And there we go, that looks pretty good to me. So of course we can now see that I forgot to do something earlier, and that's to line these edges up with these ones up here. So we've still got this nice flat thing going on here. So I'll just move these around, lock it to lock the z-axis, and just snap it to those. And at the top here I can see that I'm going to have a bit of trouble with these vertices. I'll turn this back off. So I'm just going to move these around a bit. And I don't know where I'm getting the weird face issues here, but it seems to be with the underlying mesh. So I'll just hide that for a sec. And let's just make sure that our surface is nice and smooth. Yep, that looks fine. So I'll unhide that object and go back into here. Whoops, the wrong one. So that's basically ready to continue. We'll probably have to do a few tweaks here and there down the line, like maybe add another thing there. Since that was another n-gon right there, we have to get rid of n-gons and make this all quads. So that should be nice and smooth, that should work. So the next thing we have to do is take care of this interior circle, or interior hemisphere. And I guess you could just take the inside of this, duplicate it, and just make it fit. But I personally prefer to just remodel it from scratch. And it might be a bit slower, but this way I can sort of make sure that I'm doing it right, or the way that I want to. So what I did here is I extended these vertices, scaled them into 0 along the x so that they're nice and flat, lined them up with these, and lined these up with these, filled this in. So that gives me pretty much a base to work from. So what I want to do next is add in a few edge loops. I'll add in 3 on this one, and 4 on this one. And we'll just move these around a bit just to make, you'll see why in a second. And this is just to make sure that our curve is going to be nice and smooth. and move these over to slightly closer to the edge. And gonna fill this face in, and take this one, these here. Actually, I could just center my cursor there. Switch to pivot point, the cursor pivot point. Scale this in, maybe a bit along the X just to make these line up. A bit along the Z to make those line up there. And that should be basically ready. So I'll just fill in that face, fill in that face. You can see that here it's going to be, oh, give me a second, and we're back, there we go. So as I was saying, we're going to have to make this curve a bit nicer, so we'll probably just shift this down a bit, maybe shift these up a bit, just to make sure. I'm pressing double G to activate various sliding ones. You can either use edge slide with it or vertex slide, depending on what's selected, so it's really nice and quick. So that should be the basis for our inside sphere. So the rest I'll figure out once I project these, and that's what we're going to do next. So I'm going to switch over to switch the snap element to face, and by default this is turned off. If I can just get the tooltip here. Project individual elements on the surface of other objects. That's usually turned off by default. But to do this, you actually need to turn it on. For separate objects anyway, to properly project it. So I'm going to select all my faces here, or vertices in this case. And I'm going to press G. Now I'm moving my pen away so I can use my mouse so it doesn't move. Press G, press Control to snap, and confirm. So what that did is it basically shrink wrapped the topology, or these faces here, onto the surface behind it. And that is pretty much exactly what we want to do. So I'm getting a bit of a problem here where the faces are kind of overlapping, so I'll just give this a color real quick. Settings, viewport color, I'll just make this blue. There we go. And we'll also use a nice little trick later to make sure our surface is nice and smooth. So the next thing I want to do is make sure that I have another edge loop down here. So I'll scale that in, maybe scale it along itself just to make it a bit nicer. Project it again, fill that in, and then I just have to remember how I did this earlier. I'll just move this over, so I press G twice again. It doesn't show up for some reason. Fill that in there. Fill that in. There we go. Seems I'm doing it wrong. So I'll start by filling these in actually. There we go. So I now have... Okay. So I'll just shift these over, add an edge loop, and fill this in. So it's not the cleanest thing in the world, but you can just clean this up a little bit afterwards. Do a bit more snapping. I'll deselect these edges here. Select the inner ones only. And is that one? Yeah, okay. Deselect those and just reproject that just to make sure. Maybe add in another edge loop in here, maybe there. Slide this one in. And maybe use a relax function once or twice just to make these nice and smooth. So in W, relax, relax, relax. There we go. And just reproject these to make sure. Whoops, I selected the whole thing. There we go. Reproject that. And there we go. That's our sphere. So we don't need this anymore. I'll just move it to the other layer. So that's our all quads. Nice and clean. Very easy to sharpen up with subsurf. So I'll just finish off this over here. So to do that, I'll just snap my cursor back to the object center, rotate it around cursor. I need a 22.5, I think. Yes, I do. So now extrude that and again rotate it 22.5 degrees and then just repeat that. So we get the equivalent of an 8 or of a 16 vertex circle, but only on this side because we don't really need this many vertices on this side because it's still a circular shape. So I'll just close this off. using, and I don't really care about the triangles in this case because it's the top of a cylinder, so I'll just remove those doubles, and there we go. So if we shade this smooth now, we should see a few, oh, I was expecting some normals errors because I always get them usually. And then add our subsurf, sharpen this up, and then go in here, sharpen this up, whoops, seems I hit something. Bring that up nice and close, bring this in nice and close, and there we go. So we can see that there's a bit of a problem over here. So to make sure our surface is smooth, I'm going to activate matte caps. Now my properties panel is on the left, but yours should be on the right by default. So if we click this, I already have it set to my favorite, this red glossy one, and we can see that these really help with glossy reflections because we can see basically where the surface deforms, and we can see that we've got a couple of problems here. So one of these I'm going to fix by just rotating this around, whoops, a bit too much, around just so it's about halfway between these two edge loops here. And then maybe taking these and rotating them around, maybe scaling them out ever so slightly, or maybe in this case, and then scaling them out. Just basically playing with the surface to see how we can fix this. Whoops, wrong button. Yeah, we can see it's kind of dipping in a bit too much, so I'll just fix that. Wrong pivot point. So I'll just bring these out a bit, and there we go. That should work nicely, except I kind of messed something up here somewhere. Seems to be this here. So I'll just move this up a bit and move this back in. Yeah, it takes a bit of tweaking afterwards, but yeah, this is a pretty nice result just for a quick fix. So let's rotate maybe this one back around. The trick with this is to really make it just as nice and even and smooth as possible, especially with the transitions between different topological features. That should be fine, I think. Yeah, we'll leave it like that. And that's basically it. That again, the concept behind this is to really just outline everything you need first, and then make the rest match. Because really, this is easily the defining feature of this shape is this semispherical inset. And the same with this cube. It's easily this shape that defines this overall shape. So that's basically it. I only have one other example, and I won't actually rebuild it because it's quite a bit more complicated, because it's a tetrahedron, which is a four-sided pyramid, but all the faces are triangular, so it's a bit more complicated. But I'll just go over it real quick. If we can select it with the matte cap enabled, we can see that it's nice and smooth, and that's one of the nice things about these examples, is that these surfaces are nice and smooth. So I was able to use a few topology simplifying tricks like I did on the cube. So I'll just zoom in here. I don't know why the 3D cursor's up there. So yeah, this one's a bit more crazy in the sense that there's quite a few vertices in here, and it's a bit tougher to manage a triangular shape, but funnily enough, it's a triangular shape, but there are no triangles whatsoever. It's all quads. So what I did in this case is, again, using the Boolean modifier to get this inset, then scaling out the outer, this exterior rim of vertices, if I can select it, scaling it out, that creates this nice ring that we can use to sharpen it up, which I did here, and then setting up the pyramid, or it was actually just one face at the time. The bottom is just filled in, still all quads. Fill in the edge just to set it up properly, to make sure I could get these edge loops in, to sharpen up the edges, the edges over here, and then just basically filling in the rest. I'll just enable this real quick and turn off my subsurf. So we can see that over here I used a couple of more of these reroutes just to simplify the topology going this way, and they're also duplicated on this side. And it saves a few vertices in here, probably like 6 vertices, and a few faces. And I did the same down here, same on the other side. And this is basically duplicated all the way around. On the bottom here, I did a couple of tricks to reduce face count, I think. Yeah, it got a bit messy down here, but it's on the bottom, so I don't really care. Not in this case, anyway. This is backwards. No, okay. So yeah, that's basically it. The Boolean to get this shape, the extrude, bit of snapping, some knife, figuring out how to reroute topology around. That's the thing. These things just loop in and out. And unfortunately, I kind of set it up wrong, so it loops back in on itself if you're trying to do something here, and you can't really do something in that case, but it does work for other things. Like this one works nicely, and it's really only because of these reroutes in this area. This comes down like this, and this one comes in like this, so they kind of cross. But yeah, that's basically it. That's the basics, the concept anyway. It's to outline what's needed in the shape, and then make the rest fit. And this basically applies to anything. If I could just open an example, this is a project I finished recently. I'll just try and find it. Got it somewhere. It's in 2013. There we go, the concept cookie fantasy axe. So I'll just switch over, make this full screen, switch this over to layer 1, and let's look at this model. Now this is the model by, the references are by, what's his name, Tim Van Ruden on conceptcookie.com, and it's in the free downloads, if I remember correctly, and it's Creative Commons licensed. So you can check the link in the description below, and that should lead you to the blueprints for this. But one of the cool things about this model is I figured out quite a few tricks to reroute topology. So for instance, this over here, this is all one object now, I think. Almost. I'll just hide the rest of these. You can see here that I used these same reroutes, and this made it easier to keep this nice simpler shape for the curve. I'll just hide this stupid thing. There we go. And maybe center my view so I can rotate around. So I did use this quite a few times, and the trick again in this case is to outline what's important in the shape. Like for this specifically, unfortunately I've rotated the model to render. This specifically, all that's important is the general curve, but here there was this slight inset and there's another ridge or rim here. So these were really important to outline first and then worry about this later, because these will really define the shape, and it's in combination with these other shapes that really stands out and it shows what it is. And that's basically what you have to keep in mind pretty much all the time. And you can see here I've still done that. It's a bit messy at places because I couldn't really figure out any other way. But as you can see here, this curves around because it follows the shape, and it's supposed to usually turn this way, but I couldn't make that work that particular time. In this case, it goes around here, around here. This one has the edges of this little, this little inset is the same. You get this defining face loop to show where the shape is, and it allows you to nicely crease it. Unfortunately, I've turned off subsurface seams. Whoops, wrong button. Or not, it's just not high enough. Yeah, so that nicely defines the shape. And in this case, I didn't really need to add another loop around the exterior. I mean, I could have, but it was also causing me a lot of headaches. And in the end, I didn't really need it because that's still sharp enough, because it's fairly small on the model, and yeah, it still looks the way it's supposed to. And yeah, that's basically it. There's another example down here where outlining this ridge or rim was basically the first thing I did. Let me just grab a drink of juice here. So it's basically the first thing I did. And that's really just to make sure that you get the shape the way it's supposed to, and to get the topology the way it's supposed to, so that you can easily sharpen things up, like in here, pulling these edge loops in around the edge here. It's really just planning roads, really. You have to plan them as roads to figure out where the surface will go, and that's really one of my favorite parts about modeling, is figuring that out. But yeah, that's basically it. I'll close this down now and reopen that last file. No, that's not it. There it is. So yeah, that's the concept behind this tutorial. The idea, anyway. It's basically applicable to any model. You outline the important features first and make the rest fit. Especially with flat surfaces, it's not really that important to make it all that topology dense, and if you can use a few tricks to reduce the topology count, like the topology complexity, like over here, it can really save you time as well. And it generally makes a model just easier to understand later, because it's, like I said, it's basically like a road or runway, because it shows you where things are going and why things are going that way. So yeah, thanks for watching. Probably have a couple of more tutorials coming soon, hopefully anyway. But yeah, my name is Philip again, and thanks for watching.